Welcome, we're about to start in just a few seconds. Let's just give a few shout outs to those of you that have typed in the comments box. So we definitely have it. And let me know where you're from. Stick it in the comments. If you've never been to one of these sessions before, just type new into the comments. Then I'll give you a special shout out and a welcome. Let's see who we have got. We have Janine's here from Saskatoon in Saskatchewan. Hi there, Janine. Good to see you. Roy's here from South Devon in the UK. Alison is here from Destin in Florida. William Long's here from Ireland. Good to see you as well. And also I have, there's loads of people coming in now suddenly with comments. So we also have Lisa's here from West Sussex. Hi there, Lisa. We have, if you're just joining, we are going to start in about 30 seconds or so. Let me just give a few more shout outs to people who are here. So is that Janae Dixon, who is brand new, never been to one of these sessions before. So welcome to you. We have Faith is here from Lincoln in the UK. Not sure we've met Faith, have we? You might be new, I'm not sure. Beverly, I know you from Abbotsford in Canada. Hi there, Beverly. And then, of course, Lynn from Abbotsford. Also in Lynn, do you know Beverly? You're both from the same place. Okay, that's really cool. Okay, let's get started. It's on the hour. For those of you who are brand new to these sessions, this is how it works. We have exactly 60 minutes. We finish after 60 minutes because it is the weekend coming up. And if you're in the UK, or if like me, you're in Portugal, then it's 4 o'clock. It's almost the end of the week. And wow, what a week it's been. So much great stuff happened. I hope it's been a great week for you. We've got some updates to the effective pricing software coming next week. I might tell you about that later if you're interested. So the way it works is this. We have about 20-30 minutes where I teach you something. And then we open up for questions. It's Q&A. So if you've got any questions whatsoever, really simple, just put it in the comments box and just in front of the comments, put a capital QQ. If you put QQ in front, then I will see it as a question. I'll be answering your questions. Stick them in at any point in time. In the last 20-30 minutes, I'll answer those questions. We have Sheila Flesher is here. Hi there, Sheila. So questions, that's what I'll be doing in the second half. QQ in front, and I'll answer those questions. And if you want to know what's happening in the software next week, because I'll probably forget, put it as a question. Just put QQ, Mark, what's the new software release? Valentina's here from Scotland. Hi, Valentina, good to see you again. Right, before we dive into the content for today, and by the way, the content for today is, I'm going to share with you how the math works in the software so that you can figure out how to come up with the right prices. Okay, that's what we're going to be talking about, how to come up with the right prices using effective pricing. Okay, I can see a question coming from Christopher already, so I will answer that very soon, Christopher. But before I do that, one of the things, those of you that have come to these sessions regularly, which most of you do because I recognize the names, one of the things we do is to help make the world a better place. We make a contribution to a project somewhere around the world for each and every one of you who is here live. So at the end, we see how many people are live, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on LinkedIn, whether you're on YouTube right now. Our system tells us the numbers. And then through the B1G1 organization, we make a contribution on your behalf. It doesn't cost you anything, but we make the contribution as a way of saying thank you for showing up. So the project for today's session is, we know that people really struggle in Malawi and Zambia, and where it's fed, there's a lot of a poor economy, and to help there's a great project through B1G1 which is all about training people in Malawi, Zambia to be more successful farmers so they can create more food in that area. So as a thank you for being here, we will be making a contribution for each and every one of you of providing a day's worth of training and tools to help people in agriculture, to help people farm and become more self-sufficient in Zambia and Malawi. So thank you so much for being here, because between us we are helping making the world a better place. Okay, so I did see a question from Christopher. So let's just get that question. I normally do the questions at the end, but because it came in so fast, let me just answer this one. Is this software only applicable to UK organisations? Absolutely not. It can be used for anyone, anywhere, not even just accountants and bookkeepers, but any type of industry could use this software. It's so flexible. So when you subscribe to the software, you'll be asked what country you're from. And then when you get the software, you can customize it with your currency symbol appearing before the prices and so much more. In fact, Christopher, there are people here using it right now from the US, people here today in this session using it from the UK, people from Canada, people from South Africa using it. So it doesn't matter what country you're in. Just a few more shout outs. Yvette is here. Hi there, Yvette. Thank you for that lovely video earlier. That was awesome. And you are welcome, Christopher. Michael says, like the suntan. Thank you for that. It's nice and sunny here in Portugal. Kim Lafayette is here. Hi, Kim. Andrea Glavas is here from California. Donna is here from Sherwood Park. We have also from Saskatchewan, we have Joanne. And Christopher, whose question I just asked, he's based in the DMV area. Nicolette's asked a question. I will come on to questions later. Let's get the content done. And if you've got questions like Nicolette has, put QQ in front, just like Nicolette has, and I will answer questions in about half an hour from now. Okay, so some of you are brand new. If you are brand new and have no idea what effective pricing is all about, I teach value pricing. I teach the profession how to become better at value pricing. And the software is a tool that enables you to have a pricing conversation in front of the client so that you can involve them in the pricing process, which creates transparency. It creates greater trust, greater credibility. So it's much easier to get higher prices because there's that transparency. They can see how you are coming up with the price. People using it, I was doing an interview just yesterday with a lady called Teresa Slack from over in Canada. She was telling me how she uses effective pricing to reprice her existing clients, and she increased her average price by 25%. I was interviewing Jan Bodar from Sedona, a bookkeeper, 2 weeks ago. She told me how she's been repricing her clients and increased the price by, I think it was 45% on average using this approach. It allows you to price in front of the client and price with confidence because there's a system. So if you're brand new, what we'll probably do is we'll put in the description some links to some other resources. And I would particularly recommend, if you are brand new, go and watch the recording of last week's session, which I think was called Your First Quote, where I walked through, last week I walked through the front end process, what you do in front of a client. So if you watch last week's session, Your First Quote, today's session is more about the behind the scenes. What happens behind the scenes? What's the calculations? What's the maths? How's that working out? Wow, Robin Joyce is here from Moscow, where it's I've not seen you for a few weeks, Robin. I hope you're well. Perhaps it's because it's just heat stroke and stuff you're having, which is why I haven't seen you, because it's 30 plus degrees in Moscow, which makes a big change from it's usually snowing. Okay, so we're going to look at the software in a short while, but before we do that, I have there's a training resource we have which you may or may not be aware of, and I'm going to walk through some of that, and we will then put in the description at some point, there will be a link where you can click on that, and the resource that I'm going to put on the screen, you can download the resource. Okay. So remember, if you've got any questions, just ask in the comments box, put QQ. We'll get to questions in 25-30 minutes. So let's look at behind the scenes. How does the software, which we will show later, how does the software work out your prices? And so this is the process. I'll walk you through the process, the step-by-step process. You can have a copy of this resource. And then I will show you some examples inside the software. We'll look at a little bookkeeping example, which will make it all real. And then whatever questions you've got, we'll get to those. So the calculation behind the scenes for your price is, first of all, it takes a base price. It takes a number. We have to have a number somewhere. And so we can create that number through something called the base price. I'll show you it in the software later. There's a screenshot on the screen right now. By default, when you have a pricing model, whether you want to price bookkeeping, payroll, whether you create your own model, whether you use one that we provide for you within the software, by default, usually the base price is 0. Because we come up with the starting point in the calculation in step 2 normally. But there may be situations where you want to actually start with a number before your first question. We might look at that later. If in doubt, my suggestion is just leave the default, leave the base price as 0. Because then at the heart of the model is the questions. This is where you ask the client a series of questions to help you determine what the price should be. And you would typically ask one of 2 types of questions, perhaps 3. But the main types are, what is the scope of the work? So you might, if it's bookkeeping, ask the question, how many transactions? If you're pricing payroll, you might ask, how many employees do you have? If you are pricing tax returns, it could be how many sources of income. So we ask questions about the scope of the work so that we can build that into the price. And the other thing that we do is we want to ask questions about their preferences. We want to give people choice, because when we give people choice and they pick things, that's their way of saying what they value, and we can build that into the price. So we could say, for example, do you want this work done fast or slow? If they say fast, that means they value speed. And of course, what we should do is increase the price. And we would use the question and the maths to do exactly that. Now, there is a third type of question we could ask if you're at the advanced level of value pricing, and that's the question to uncover and determine willingness to pay. But let's park that for now. That's more advanced. Most of the questions you will want to ask the client are to uncover the scope of the work and to give a few choices. So let's go back to here. So we ask the client questions, and when you set your questions up, and I'll show you some examples in a short while, when we set the questions up, then what happens in the software is for each question, you decide what type of question it is. It might be a yes/no question. So that could be, for example, do you want us to do the work fast or slow? Yes or no? And then you can determine when you set the question up that if they say fast, what does that do to the price? That could add a number on, that could multiply. You might, for example, decide that if they want it done fast, then we charge them a 10% premium. So we multiply the calculation of price by 10%, so we times by 1.1. So we can ask different questions. They can be yes/no questions. Do you want this, yes or no, for example? They could be value questions. How many bank accounts do you have? How many employees do you have? And we can ask drop-down box questions where we give people a choice, like, for example, what accounting system are you on? And we might have QBO, Xerox, Sage, whatever it might well be, and then we can decide what that does to the price. Does it add a number on? Does it multiply? And there's a few other things that we can do with the math as well. I'll show you later, but we have something called number of units and unit price. My advice, if you're a beginner, stick to the simple stuff, adding and multiplying. So we create our questions, and that builds up the price behind the scenes. I'm going to show you an example to make it clearer. And so going back to that first step of base price, if we decide to keep with the default of 0, then that means the very first question you ask is a very important question, because the first question establishes the starting point of the calculations. And so that might be, for example, that's usually the most important scope question. So you might ask, for example, if it's bookkeeping, how many monthly transactions do you have? And you might want to use that as the basis for the starting, for the price as the starting point. We'll see an example soon. So most of the calculations is done by the questions that you ask and the calculations behind the scenes. So remember, if you've not ever used the software before, watch last week's recording where I walk through how you do the quote in front of the client. Today is the behind the scenes. Now, there is something called isolating sections, which I want to show you an example, because this is a bit more advanced, but it's also really powerful. And essentially what that means is when we create our questions in the software, the questions we ask the client, we can break them up into sections, which firstly means that when we go through it with the client, Each section is a separate page of questions on our laptop, on our screen. So if we're pricing bookkeeping, we might ask some questions about their business, which could be the scope questions. And once we've asked those, we then move to another page, another section, which might be things that you might want, like, do you want it done fast or slow? Do you want weekly bookkeeping or monthly bookkeeping? And so we can break down our questions into different sections. And when we do that, we can use something called isolate the sections, which basically changes the math. So the way the calculation of the price is calculated is it follows the order of the questions. So whatever question is number one, that establishes the starting point, and then we add further questions that add amounts on or multiply things. There are situations where you might want to change the order. And that's what the little tick box called isolate is. I'm going to show you an example. It's going to become much clearer when I give you an example. I'm just saying that's one of the little changes that you can make to the general rule that the math follows the order of the questions. You can change that with this thing called isolate sections. So watch this space. I'll come back to that later. Don't worry. Now what we can then do, and again, you probably don't need this until you're more at an advanced level, but the software calculates a price based on your scope questions, based on choices you give them. You have a price, a number. What we can now do is apply a global adjuster. It's a simple entry box in the software. It defaults to 1, which means it multiplies by 1, which has no impact whatsoever. The global adjuster you might find useful if, for example, let's say you have a pricing model that you are really happy with, it works really well, it gets the right prices, you're getting great results. And you've been using it for 12 months. 12 months down the line, you realize that you should revisit your prices and you want to put your prices up by 10% because of things like inflation and whatever else. And so when you put your price up by 10%, you have two options. One is you could go back through all of your questions and look at the numbers you've put in and increase them all by 10%. That's one way. Or the shortcut is you could just go to that global adjuster and put in 1.1, and what that will do is it will work out the price exactly like last year, but it will then times it by 1.1. It'll increase by 10%. It's a shortcut way of very quickly increasing the overall price. There are other ways that you could use it when you get creative. It could be you have a model that you really, really like. You're about to go and see a potential new client, and you know that new client has just come from KPMG, is used to paying extremely high prices, and you think you could get a higher price, and you want to increase your prices before the meeting. And one of the quick things you could do is, let's say you want a 20% offer price that are 20% higher, you could put in 1.2, and then after the meeting you could go back and just change that one thing. That's the global adjuster. Think of it as an override that you can use to change the prices if you want to. Now once you've then done that, you'll know, if you follow me, I teach this idea that every client's different and we want to give them choices. And one way to do that is to use menu pricing. Think of it as the bronze, silver, gold package. And what the software does is we calculate a price, and by default that price is the price of your bronze package. But you can actually create up to 5 packages in the software, up to 5. So the price calculated is the bronze. And so now you want to decide, well, how much higher do I want my silver package to be? How much higher my gold package or my premium package, whatever packages you have, how much higher are they going to be? And essentially you have 2 settings in the software. For each of those packages, you can increase the price by either a percentage or an amount. The percentage is the one you'll use most of the time. So if you want your silver to be 20% higher than the bronze, then you would multiply by 1.2. And there's a box in the software, you put the 1.2. I will show you it in a bit. It's in the screenshot here as well. If you want your premium to be 50% higher, you put 1.5, and that will multiply the bronze by 1.5, 50% higher. So a choice you'll want to make is, once you've created your price for your bronze service, if you've got other packages, you then calculate the price either by a multiplication or adding something on, or you can use a bit of both. You could decide that your premium wants to be 50% higher plus an extra $2,000 higher, because in your premium version, you're going to outsource some of the work to somebody else who will charge $2,000, and you want to make sure you cover that, so you could do a combination. Now, once you've then done that, once you've now got your prices for your packages calculated, you also have a box for minimum and maximum. And this is important because you want to make sure that when you sit down with a client, you don't get any surprises where the price is crazy low or crazy high. Because if you make a mistake somewhere in your calculations in the math and don't realize that, a good example is sometimes people put in the software, I've seen people put something like, do you want it done fast or slow? And if it's done fast, they want to multiply by 20%, so 1.2. If it's no, you should put 1, because we multiply by 1 and it doesn't change the price. But sometimes people put 0. And of course, if you multiply by 0, you get 0, which means all your price you've built up, if you then at the end inadvertently multiply by 0, you get a free service. And that's not very good. Now, we can spot that through something I'll show you in a short while in the software. But to make sure you never do that is you can set within your packages what would be the minimum price and the maximum price. So if ever the calculations you've done do come up crazy high, crazy low, the software will insert instead your chosen minimum and maximum. That's, if you like, it's just to make sure that nothing goes horribly wrong when you're live in front of a client. Now, once it's done that in step 6, what it then does is it takes that price you've calculated for each of your packages and it divides it by a number, if you want to, because what it's calculating is a total price. And that's fine if you want to show the client the total price. But usually, and partly because of price psychology, we might want to chunk it down to a smaller number. So for example, if you're doing bookkeeping and for this particular client it works out as the price is, let's say, $12,000 for the bookkeeping for a year, you probably don't want to tell the client it's $12,000. You would prefer to tell the client it's $1,000 per month. So we break it down to a monthly figure. And if that's the case, then we would want to put in a series of 12s in the software so it knows to then divide by 12 to come up with a monthly price. You could put in here 52 if you wanted to give it as a weekly price, for example. Or it may be that you have a service which is, for example, setting somebody up on a QuickBooks Online system, and it might be that you show the total price for bronze, but for your premium, you might let them spread it over 3 months, and so you might divide it by 3. There's a reason you might do that because of price psychology. The next thing the software does then is it then rounds the number, if you want it to end with a certain amount. So this is to do with the world of price psychology. If you want your prices, actually, that's step 8, I've missed a step. But if you want your price to end with a 9 or 5, it'll round it to that if you want. The other thing that you can choose in step 7 is, if you want to, you can choose to show decimal places. I wouldn't normally do that for accounting services, but if you have something that's a very low price, perhaps it's a small payroll, if you wanted to, and your payroll for a very small business might be about $10 or £10, you might want to show it as $9.99 and show the decimal points. You can do that. By default it doesn't, but you can do that. That's step 7. Step 8 is the rounding. And then what we do is we will then modify the price for any discounts or behavior rewards. I probably won't dive into that right now. That's, if you like, an optional thing, another level. You also adds on then any upsells, enhancements, and then finally, when you get to the payment plan, if you want it to, it'll add on your sales tax so they can see what the payments are. If you've got, so if you're in the UK, for example, and the price is £1,000 plus VAT, when you show the payment plan, you'll want to show them as payment of $1,200. That's the 20% VAT added on. That's how the maths is done. That's the calculations. So if you've got any specific questions, remember, stick them in the questions box with QQ. I'm going to show you a couple of examples within the software to illustrate some of those things. So if you just bear with me a second, I am just going to re-log in to the software. Okay, that's done. And I'm also just going to see how many questions have come in so far. just so I make sure I allow time for all the questions. I've got quite a few questions from Andrea. I will be answering your questions, Andrea. Let me just see. Great. Okay. So let's actually dive into a few things. I want to show a few examples. So I mean, this is the home screen of the software, and on this page is all your finished models. I've got lots of models because I do demonstrations all the time. So I've got pricing models for annual financial statements, for bookkeeping, for cleanup work, for cloud setup, forecasting. I've even got a model for a hair salon. Not because you would price, not because you're a hair salon, but as some of you know, a few weeks back, I did a session where I showed you how you could build a model for your clients and how you could earn consulting fees by helping your clients set up a model. And Yvette, who is here, Yvette specializes in hair salons and wants to set up effective pricing for her hair salon clients. So we worked together and we created a hair salon model. I might later on, if there's time, show you something in there because I want to. There's some advanced thinking that went into that one, as Yvette knows. So you can price anything that you want in front of the client, and when you do, you would hit Use Model. It would then go through the front end process. I'm not going to do that now because that's what we did last week. So if you missed last week's session, if you're new to the software, watch that. I show you what to do in front of the client. Today is behind the scenes. So I'm just going to hit on the cogwheel at the top, which then goes behind the scenes with all the things you would set up. And I'm going to go into model management. Model management is where you set up all your pricing models. If you want, you can grab the pre-written ones we've done for you, which will be at the bottom of the screen. Which ones are available depends on which version of the software you go for, the starter plan, the pro plan, the full plan. And I earlier just did one called bookkeeping test. So if I just hit the edit button and hit the save and continue. So this is where you set your pricing models up. And on the left-hand side is a workflow. So we would set up our questions, which determines the math. And then we have a series of other pages. We can look at expressing the price. This is where you could put a base price in if you wanted to. You can put that global adjuster in there. Pricing parameters is really important. That's where you set up everything to do with your packages. So think about the order of the calculations I went through. We use our questions to determine the price of what would be the bronze package, and then what we do is we from that work out what the price will be for the other packages, and that's all done in pricing parameters. We can then set up what is in our packages. That's got nothing to do with the maths, so I'm not covering that today. We can also set up our discounts or behavior rewards. We can set up our enhancements, that's the upsells, which again I probably won't do today unless I have specific questions. What I wanted to show you was the first thing, or the main thing I want to show you is this idea of isolating questions. So I have a model here for bookkeeping. It's a really, really simple model. I just took I simplified it for the purpose of this demonstration. And so I have two sections, one called About Your Business and one called Payroll Solution. So for bookkeeping, I've got two questions. If I just hit the edit button, we can see the question. So I have a question that's called, hang on a second, what's gone on here? Oh, how have I messed my model up? I've messed my model up somehow. I was playing with this earlier and somehow, well, that's a weird one. I'm going to just re-log into the software a second and pick a different one. This is the problem with doing demonstrations. I'm playing around with them all the time, messing things about, and as you'll see, this is one I've messed around with. So let me just log in. I think I've just done that. Let me just go back into that model and bookkeeping test that I was playing around with. Questions. Got it, yeah, okay. I think it's yeah. So I've got a question, I've got a model or a question called number of transactions. Let me just get rid of the per month. So I've got number of transactions, and I've decided that this is a value question because it's looking for the input of a number. How many transactions do we have in our bookkeeping business? And I have then an add question type. I'll explain that in a bit. And I'm going to put 24. So let's say, for example, and I'm not suggesting this is a good idea necessarily, but let's imagine for bookkeeping, you want to price it at an amount per transaction. So let's say $2 per transaction per month. So if they have 10 transactions a month, that's $20 times 12, that would be $240 a year. If I got that right, for 10 transactions times 12. Okay, so $2 a transaction. Personally, I wouldn't do that because transactions change every flipping day. It will be too complicated. I would have instead a drop-down list and perhaps have a price if they have between 0 and 10 transactions, another price if it's between 11 and 50 transactions a month, and so on, which is what I've built into the bookkeeping template model that you can use in the software. But I'm just using this to illustrate something. You could, if you wanted to, price based on an amount per transaction. And if you wanted to price at $2 per transaction over 12 months, over a year, that would be $24 per transaction. And so what the software does, if I was to enter 100 transactions a month, the software is going to say, right, it's 100 per month, times it by $2, times by 12, or in other words, times by 24, that's going to be 100 times 24. The bookkeeping price is going to be $2,400. And it's an add button because it adds it on to whatever question was before that. This is the first question, so it just makes it 2,400. And that's it. I'm going to show you how, you're going to see how the maths works in a short while. So I have that as a question. I have another question that says, why do I have this question? I'll forget, that multiplies by 1. I can't remember why that was just me testing around. So we have a question. We've got something really simple to come up with our bookkeeping price. Our bookkeeping price is going to be based on the number of transactions times by an amount per transaction. I wouldn't price that way, as I said, and also there's lots of other questions you would probably want to ask. You would probably want to ask things like how many bank accounts want reconciling. You might want to give them choices like, do you want the bookkeeping done weekly or monthly or quarterly? But let's just keep it simple. And let's imagine that what you then want to do is, in your bookkeeping model, you want to offer, do they also want your payroll solution? Now, personally, I recommend that you price payroll as a separate model to bookkeeping, but I know some people want to build in payroll into their bookkeeping model. So let's do that. So the way we can do that is to create a second section of questions, which I've got here. It's called payroll solution. So this one I'm moving around. This is a separate, when you're in front of the client, it'll ask these questions next. So page 1 is about your business, how many transactions. Page 2 then has payroll solution. And I've got 3 questions here. I've got, do you want our payroll solution? And I've set that up as a yes or no. Either they do or they don't. And the way I've set this one up is whether they answer yes or no, it adds on 0. Because I'm not using this question to determine the price. It's just to find out, do they want payroll as well, yes or no? And if they say no, I would skip to the next page. But if they said yes, I would then ask the next 2 questions. One would be, how many employees do you have? So this question, as you can see, is how many employees do you have? It's a value question because we want to find out how many. Okay, there's 3 types of questions, remember. They're either, oops, I've messed this one up. They're either a value question, they're either a drop-down box, a list of options, or it's a yes-no. This one's a value one. And I've put in $60 or £60, whatever currency you're in, and what that means is that if they have, this is what the math is doing. If they have 1 employee, and let's just say we want to do our payroll at $5 per employee per month. $5 per employee per month. So $5 per month over the course of a year is 5 times 12 is $60. So if we want $5 per month as our payroll cost per employee, then we want to multiply employees by 60. So what's happening here is we take the value, the number of employees, let's say 1, and then we multiply it by this number here, 60, so $60 per employee per year, and that's going to add it on to where we were before. So if, let's say the price of the bookkeeping works out at $1,000 for the year, they then have 1 employee and they want the payroll doing, it will add on 60. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to show you the full calculation in a bit. So we might want to add on our payroll at amount per employee. However, of course, with payroll, we don't know. That employee might be on a weekly wage or a monthly salary. And if they're on a weekly wage, we have to do 4 times as much work, give or take a bit, because we're doing the payroll every single week rather than every single month. So we might want a question that says, how frequently is this payroll? And in this case, we might use a drop-down box. So we have a number of options. I've set it up really simple. It's either monthly or it's weekly. And I've set it up as a monthly a multiply calculation type. In other words, what this will do is if they say my employee is on monthly, I multiply by 1. That's the price. My $5 per month. So for 1 employee, it's $60 for the year. And if they're on monthly, it's still $60 for the year. But if they're a weekly wage and I have to do it every single week, I've set this up to multiply by 4. And so it'll take that $60 and it'll make it actually $240 per year. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. An annual employee would be $60 for the year, or $240 if it needs doing every single week. Now, having now done that, let me go to the final stage. In the final stage of the workflow, we have this review. This review allows you to do a test, to see how the numbers are working out, to see if they come out as you would expect. And so let's imagine, for argument's sake, we have a client that's got 1,000 transactions. And with this client, we're going to say no to the payroll. We're just going to do the bookkeeping. Now, what we'd expect and hope for is that at $2 per transaction per month, that should be 1,000 times $2 times 12 months. Let's see what happens if I hit the calculate button. Here we go. We have $24,000 for the year. That's 1,000 transactions times $2 times 12 months. And it's adding on nothing further. We've got a running total. It's adding on nothing for the payroll. And further down, we can see what that would be with our bronze, silver, gold as monthly amounts. But I'm just looking at the calculations for now. Let's imagine now this client has an employee. And so we can test this. What happens if we say yes to payroll with 1 employee? Now we know it should calculate at $5 per month per employee, which is $60 for the year. So if we hit calculate, let's see what happens. And we've got $24,000 for the bookkeeping, and it's added on $60. Okay, we're all happy with that. That makes sense. We've added on $60 for the bookkeeping for that 1 employee. By the way, I'm not saying these are prices you should charge. I'm just illustrating. What if, though, that employee is weekly? Well, if it's weekly, we want the payroll to be 4 times as much. So let's change this to weekly and see what happens to our 24,060. If we hit calculate, oh my goodness, we've actually got, I don't know if you can see in the bottom right, that question has taken our 24,060 up to 96,240. Oh, I wasn't expecting that. Why is that? Well, the reason for that is because, remember, the math, the calculations is in the order of the questions. So our first section of questions establishes 24 grand for the bookkeeping. Then we're adding on $60 for a year's worth of payroll for the 1 employee. And then we're multiplying by 4 because it's weekly. But what it's doing is it's multiplying the full 24,060 by 4. And what we really want to do is we only want to multiply the payroll bit by 4. We want to keep the 24,000 for the bookkeeping, and then we want to just add on 4 lots of $60, $240, okay? So how do we do that? That's where isolate sections comes in. So if I go back to the questions, when you create sections, you have a little tick box called isolate. Isolate, okay? What that does is a bit like putting parenthesis in an Excel formula. What that does is the software does the calculations for your payroll solution in isolation, and then whatever number that creates, it adds on to the previous section, which was $20,000 for the bookkeeping. Let's see what happens when we hit isolate. I'm going to hit save and continue. I'm going to go back to this review stage. I'm going to put in 1,000, and that's going to give us, if we just, oops, I didn't mean to hit save and continue. I've just, let me just go back again. I meant to click calculate. Calculate was what I wanted. Edit, next, review. Where were we? So we have 1,000 employees. If I hit calculate, that's our 24,000. I want 1 employee on monthly. That adds our $60, but actually we want it to be weekly. If we now do this, rather than 96,000, we get our 24,240. Okay, so it's just simply now this weekly question has multiplied the payroll bit by 4. Okay, so I'm hoping that really helps. Isolating sections is a really powerful way if you want to have where you build up your pricing model by asking clients if they want, for example, payroll as well as the bookkeeping. We can then do some quite interesting calculations without the math, those multiplications affecting the other parts of the price. Okay, there's lots more stuff I could share with you, but I want to answer questions, and also I just want to make 2 really important points, and that is there is a lot of complicated stuff you can do with the software. We can do some really clever stuff. There's lots of ways to get to the result that we want. But people new to the software sometimes overcomplicate things. My advice is, if you're new to value pricing, if you're new to effective pricing, keep it simple. Don't have too many questions, because the more questions you create, the more potential for unexpected things happening, like multiply by 0. If you want to do something, I would suggest if you build your own models, keep it simple, or use the ones that we've written for you and then just adapt them. Because you can always add complexity over time. You can, as you start using a model with a client, you might think, do you know what, I should really ask this extra question. And we can always build it up over time as we learn. It was interesting, I got a video, I think she's here, from Kim Lafayette. Kim, I watched your video earlier, which is awesome, and Kim made a really important point. She's getting amazing results with the software. I forget what she was saying, but the numbers just blew me away, how much higher prices she's getting. But she said this very important thing. She said, I still don't know everything about the software and value pricing, and I know that I'm just taking it one step at a time. The model's never going to be perfect, and that's what I want to say to you is keep things simple, and then we can build it over time, okay? And as part of keeping things simple, just in the order just use add and multiply. You've got access to things like unit pricing. If you've got things like other ways of doing the calculations, wait till you're more advanced user. Otherwise, you might find you get some unexpected surprises. Right, let's, Tracy says multiply, this is funny. That's me, multiply by 0 problems. You're not alone, Tracy. It's the most common thing when somebody comes to Sarah to support her and says, I'm getting weird numbers, or I changed the price. Sorry, I changed the questions, and it's always the same price. Well, the first thing we look at is that price that's always appearing, the minimum or the maximum. And that's because somewhere you've times by 0, so it doesn't matter what you change in the questions, it's always going to be 0, and then it'll just reinsert the minimum price. Okay, so don't worry, Tracy, you are not alone. It's a common thing that people do, and that's why we have this. That's why I have this review section that we built in, so you can test it yourself. And if you see the running total, and if something weird seems to happen, if that 24,000 suddenly goes as a 0, it's because you've put in a multiply by 0. And so you can just quickly go and change that. Right, let's see what questions we have. Where do we get to? where do we get to? I think Nicolette was the first question. Is there a tax planning brochure available in the program? Nicolette, one of the things as part of my, excuse me, while I reach across here, in the Value Pricing Academy, once a month in How To Thursdays, I teach how to communicate value. I teach about the power of brochures. Brochures are available as part of the Value Pricing Academy. Brochures are not available as part of the software. If all you do is, and by the way, if you're in the Value Pricing Academy, you get a complimentary copy of the software. But if you just want the software and you subscribe to the software, we build the models for you, depending on which plan you've got, but not the brochures, okay? You would need to either join the Value Pricing Academy or create your own. And if you are in the Value Pricing Academy, Nicolette, then yes, there is a tax planning brochure, which we cover usually, I think, when people have been in the Academy for 12 months, it's part of the advanced training. Okay, we have Wendy is here as well. Hi, Wendy. We have Sybil from Canada. I mentioned Robin. Mindy's, hi Mindy. Mindy Morrison from Glendale. Here's a question from Andrea. So long one, so bear me a second while I read this one. How to factor in complexity of clients' cost. I have some clients that if I base solely on the number of accounts, and number of transactions, doesn't really factor in the complexity of the work we have to do when they have a third-party CRM tool or many Google Sheets of data to consider in our rec work. I'm not sure I fully understand that. How to factor in complexity of clients' costs. Doesn't really complexity of the work we have to do. I'm not quite sure, Andrea, where we're getting at then. Are you talking about something about the client's internal systems that mean you have extra work to do, higher scope of work? Or is it because, and I think that's what you mean. If that's the case, we can build that in as a question really, really easily. Based on your experience. And I don't know, I can't think of a practical example, but let me use this as an example. And I don't know if this helps or not, but one of the things that, if you're a bookkeeper doing bookkeeping, one of the things that would make your life easier, potentially, is if you install for the client a system like Receipt Bank and you teach the client how to use their phone to scan things and set it up to put things in the right place. That then does some of the data entry for you and makes your life easier. And so one of the things that you could do is you could ask the client a question that says, do you use Receipt Bank? And if the answer is no, you could multiply the price by, say, 20% higher, let's say 1.2. And so it's going to be a higher price if they don't use that system. And so when you then give them the price and they say that price is too expensive, you could then say, let's go back to the questions. If we were to train you up and set you up with Receipt Bank, it makes our life easier and the price will come down. Would you like to see what the price would be? And at that point, you go back to the question, you change Receipt Bank to yes, I'm using Receipt Bank. You then reveal the new price and the client goes, wow, that saves a lot. Yes, please show me how to use that tool. So in other words, and I'm not sure if I've answered the question right, Andrea, but if you've got clients that have or have not got tools that either make your life easier or not so easy, then just make that a question that you ask. Do you have this software? Do you use this? And then based on the answer and based on your experience, you can increase or decrease the price. Now, that's I think what the question was. The question I was expecting from you, Andrea, and I may have got, I know there's more questions further on, is I know that a question I think you asked or someone asked is, what if how do I build into my pricing the fact that the client's using third-party software which I'm paying for? An example might be perhaps you set them up with QBO under wholesale billing, and so for all your clients you're actually paying for their QBO for them. And then I know there's been an outcry recently when a lot of QBO Pro advisors said, QBO have just increased the price of the software and I don't know how to pass that on to my clients. And so one of the things you might want to do is build into the software the price of third-party systems that you put in place. There are many, many ways that you could do that in the software. It might be, let me just give you an example based on something we've not looked at yet so far. So one of the things that, having worked out the price of your solution, we then have our bronze, silver, gold. And remember that normally, and I use the word bronze, silver, gold because if you're new, you'll understand what I mean. But actually in the software, by default, we use the language essential, full, and premium. And there's also a light, and there's actually 5 options. I'm not going to talk about the reason why you might want to use 5, but there are some reasons when you understand value pricing at a deeper level why you might want to do that. But normally you would use a bronze, silver, gold, or essential, full, and premium. And if that's the case, then we have this line that says relative price multiplier, and I have a 1, a 1.3, and a 1.5. So the way this model's worked out is we work out the price of our bookkeeping. We had $24,000, and for the full package, it would multiply by 1.3. It would be 30% more expensive. For the premium 1.5, it would be 50% more expensive. But remember, we could also add as well. So let's imagine, for argument's sake, that in your premium version, and only your premium version, you decide that you're going to also pay for and set them up with QBO. And let's say QBO costs you, I have no idea, but let's say $200 a year for the client. Then we could put in $200 here so that when it works out the price of premium, it multiplies by 1.5 and it adds on the $200. And so it's adding on your third-party costs. That's one place in the software that you could build in third-party software costs. There are other places you could as well. As I said at the outset today, there's different ways of getting to the result you want, but that's one way of doing it. Now, when I've seen these people on these comments on Facebook saying, I'm really annoyed with the Intuit because they've now increased the price. How do I sort that out with the clients? Well, let's say the price of Intuit QBO went up from $200 to $300. We just changed this to $300 in our model. And that means all future clients, we've built that in. But as far as past clients are concerned, what you need to make sure is that, and this has nothing to do with the software now, you just need to make sure that when they agree to a price in your fixed price agreement or proposal, you need to make it really clear that you will revisit the price when third-party costs change. Okay, this is just something about the communication, the managing of the expectations. Okay, Didi, next, this is not a question, but Didi says, I used to be a client a couple of years ago. I love the software and would love to renew my subscription. It'd be great to have you on board. It may be that you were using the previous software. People tell me effective pricing is a huge improvement on the old one. Okay, Millie's got a question. She says, by the way, we have 9 minutes left. I will try and hurry up with questions because we do finish promptly on the hour. Millie says, EP, effective pricing, always starts with monthly invoice volume. Should we change this question to monthly transaction volume? If so, what should we use as benchmarks? Okay, so what Millie's referring to, if I just go back to here, is, and if I just go to the settings and if I go to the settings and model management, we've set up some models for you. So we have a proper bookkeeping model, not the one I was just messing around with. That was one just to illustrate isolating sections. If I go to bookkeeping model, and if I go to the questions about your business, the first proper question, I think is what Millie's saying, is how many transactions per month do you raise? And I have a drop-down box. So if you have 1 to 10 transactions, it's 600 for the year. If it's 11 to 30, it's 900. You'd want to change these to be whatever works best for you. But the point is that I think Millie's saying is you can change this wording to anything that you want. I know some bookkeepers and accountants base the pricing of bookkeeping on the number of transactions per month. Some base it on the number of sales invoices per month. I've seen some people base the bookkeeping price just based on the turnover of the business. You can edit, you can change these questions in any way that you want. So, and it asks for transactions per month. You could ask for transactions per week. You could ask for transactions per year. It's entirely up to you. You can edit everything behind the scenes. So, Millie, I hope that helps. Andrea says, in pricing parameters, where do the minimum maximum amounts factor into the price calculation? So, I think I answered that earlier when I went through the document. What it does is, just to overview again, it asks the questions like I did with that example. Let's say you've got the $24,000 plus $60 for the employee, and that comes up with the price. And then what we do is we multiply by a global adjuster, which we've got as 1. Then we create the price for our packages. So our bronze is $24,060, and then we can have a premium and a full version with a higher amount. And then we check against the minimum and maximum. So let's say that it's come up with $24,060, and let's say for whatever reason you never ever feel comfortable with charging bookkeeping more than $20,000. And so if you put $20,000, the software will override the $24,060 and just put $20,000 in. Now personally, it's entirely up to you. I would always set a very high maximum, because you shouldn't be embarrassed about high prices. Minimums are more important. But that's when it happens, Andrea. It's after it's calculated the price for each of the packages, it then just does a double check. Is this within the minimum maximum? And if it's not, if your price has been come up as higher or lower, it will substitute. And then it does the other things then. It'll do the behavior awards and the enhancements and so on. Okay. Donna says, where do we find the last session recording? It's on the best place to go, the easiest place, and I think actually Sarah's answered that, but for anybody, just go to YouTube. Just go to YouTube. Tracy Hamilton says, great, I have a hair salon I need to price. Actually, I think, Tracy, just to clarify, that model, it's not a model for you to price bookkeeping services for hair salons. One of the things you can do with the software is you can create a model for hair salons to use. So when I was working with Yvette, she specializes in hair salons, and she wants to do business advisory work and help the client with their pricing, because most businesses have no idea how to price. And so she wants to go into the hair salon and set them up so that when a customer comes in, they can open up their iPad and say, use the software and ask questions like, do you want your hair colored? Do you want a full cut? I don't understand hair. You can tell by my hair, I have no idea what really happens in a hair salon, but the software can be used by your clients, and you can charge them a fee to do that. That's what I meant by that. I did a session about 4 weeks ago on that, if you're interested in finding out more. Mindy says, for the full program, do the new templates just show up, or do I need to download them from the software? So the answer is they just show up. So what you do is, let me just go back to the software. When you go into the cogwheel, the settings, and hit model management, the very first time you go there, the first time you go here, you will not see any of these models. These are my models. You'll have 0 models. But as we scroll to the bottom, you will see a whole bunch of ones with a yellow button saying use model. And these are all the ones that we've written for you. If you have the pro plan of the software, you will see all of these. If you have the full or the starter, it'll be a smaller number, okay? And so I know that, for example, bookkeeping is in all 3 plans. So even if you get the starter one, you'll see a line that says bookkeeping, it will say use model. All you have to do, Mindy, if you want to use, for example, this cloud setup model, you hit use model, and what the software does is it clones it and copies it and makes it yours. So I can now give it my own name. So it just puts a date on it, but I could call it my cloud setup. This is now my model, and I can go through and I can tweak, change, edit the questions, and when I'm happy, I can, let me just go back. And if I now go back in my list of models here, and I think it appears at the bottom, can you see I've got one called My Cloud Setup? Use for quote. I can now start using it. It's that fast to grab a model we've written. You just hit use model, it copies it, clones it, and it's now in the top half for you to start using. Okay, we have 2 minutes left, so I need to hurry up. I'm not sure what Tracy, what did he meant, but Tracy says I can help you with the model. Okay, Andrea says, how do I use the fixed price print template and the payment plan template? When should I do that? I think we're going to be, we might cover that next week, I think. Sarah, we should really run a poll. Have we got time to do the poll? I think I messed up, Sarah. We set up a poll so you could choose what we cover next Friday. I'm going to make an executive decision, Sarah. When we ran the poll last week, today's topic was the one that everyone voted for, got the most votes. The topic that got the second most votes was how do I customize the software to set it up? And so one of the things we could do is do that next week. And as part of that, which I think Emily's going to do, what we can do is show you how, as part of customizing it and setting it up, we can show you how to make it look like yours. So rather than effective pricing, it has your logo, it has your color scheme, and as part of that, we can show you how, as Andrea asks, how to set up the fixed price print templates and payment plan templates. So in other words, when you're in front of a client and they see the price, you can hit the print button and have a beautiful one page that you can give them there and then. And when you get to the payment plan that shows the dates of the payments, once they've said yes, you can print that out there and then as well and have a nice payment schedule. And so one of the things that I can show you is how to make those look beautiful and add them. So I hope that's okay with you, Emily, if you're watching. And sorry, Sarah, we did set the poll up and I ran out of time. And so Andrea, we'll answer that one next week, if that's okay. Sarah, just make sure we do that, and we do that. I know we've answered lots of Andrea's questions. That's because she asked lots last week, and I never got to her questions. So apologies, Andrea. Hopefully, I've answered them this week. I know there are probably more questions, and we only have about 60 minutes for these sessions. So I apologise if I've not answered your question. So here's how you can get your questions answered. Option 1, come next week. And just like Andrea did this week, just make a note of your questions and get in there quicker because I go through the order they come in. So ask your questions next week. You can, or alternatively, if you want the answer sooner than that, option 2 is go to my Facebook group. Hopefully you're in it. Value Pricing with Mark Wickersham. Answer the question there. You can use that Facebook group, Value Pricing with Mark Wickersham, to ask questions about the software. And if you tag me, I will see those questions and I will help you out. So apologies to Nancy, Mindy, and others who I haven't answered your question yet. And option 3, of course, is you can always reach out to Sarah at support@. We are here to help you as best we can. It's just that we always keep these sessions to 60 minutes. Otherwise, it's the weekend. We could be going on for hours answering questions. So just let us know via Facebook, email Sarah, come next week, and we will help you out as best we can with those questions. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that session. I hope that's given you a better insight into how the calculations works and that isolate sections. And anything else I want to say? I don't think so. So have an amazing weekend. If you're brand new, I always just play out with a bit of music just because I like to read through the comments and so on. And if I see something urgent to answer, I can probably deal with it. So I will hopefully see. Have a great weekend. Just so you know, we have another session of this next Friday where it may well be Emily. And I'm also doing a session, I think, on Wednesday that anybody can come to. It'll be streamed like this one, where I'll be teaching some of the foundations to communicating value. That's next Wednesday. Watch out for an email coming, or watch out for an announcement in my Facebook group. And if you're in the Online Live Academy, we have a session, I think, on Thursday, if I remember right. So a few things happening next week for your calendar. Thank you for coming. Have a great weekend. Goodbye for now.
I wasted all my time, I wasted all my nights, I wasted it on on someone who's indifferent. He didn't love me right. He told me I was blind, but I never really wanted to listen.